The feeling of the pentagram rite seemed to go into me, and I saw stripes of pink and white.
In the shadows, I saw orange, but it was only in the middle of these shadows. I saw balls of flashing light, kind of like those mortar fireworks going off outside of the shadows. Within the mirror, I saw something orange and glumpy or knotted. There was low sounds mixed with high sounds at the same time that seemed like talking in a language that I don't recognize. I felt a presence beneath the temple. During the final reading, there was a vibration that made its way from my feet to my head, and there was a totalness to it.
I felt a presence towards the east.
In the final scrying, I saw a lavender rope, I guess, with 5 knots as I felt the storm of euphoria pour down me. In chapter 9, we run into the idea that some things, perhaps, can be controlled or placated to be on your side, but they may be such to break free and get what they want or need anyways. People will use their control or relationship with entities as a means to threaten others. We can learn to notice the signs of what is beyond perception in order to respond. Some individuals will lose of their bodily attractiveness or prowess, of their social station, but their character will remain intact, and that's where the true value is. Something about the way Runyon writes fiction kind of, sounds a bit repressed in the eroticism that he brings up. You know what I mean? Some of the words that people will use. I don't really want to associate it with certain things that a particular person did or lesser things that was done to her, but I can definitely think of the way this person talked and how that kind of comes across much the same in these stories. I mean, you can name things, and yeah, I know they're wanting to like make them part other creature, so it's kind of like a human, but it has a bunch of tentacles, arms sticking out from around its vagina or something odd like that. Okay, I understand that part, but some of it, although censorship may have led to some things in novels and stuff that people would have encountered that may have indicated that this was perhaps the way to not be as blunt about what the object was. But he does write it like, I guess, the adventure novels that are aimed at young men. Chapter 10 also reminds us that there are beings that respond to the spiritual passages, the spiritual formulas, even when done almost covertly, almost, maybe not performed too well. But there is a response. Of course, you should put your effort into it and whatever performance you're capable of. But the spirits do respond. Chapter 11 reminds us that there is power in purity, and that can be in, more talked about terms, in, value of the self, value from who you're from, or who you'll be amongst. Rank is mentioned, and I can't help but feel like some of these terms and names that are being used are either directly or altered forms of things related to psychological markers or spiritual realms or beings. I know this is a fiction, but you know what I mean. It's sort of a magical fiction, but not so overtly. And I presume Commando X and Night Jump might be too. Sometimes those who need to be saved were already being saved, but you weren't informed about that. And perhaps you may take the helm of that. And, but we have an aspect of, like, when it comes to certain individuals, they're said to have certain spiritual sight and maybe some other powers and stuff. But it's like, but if you don't have the openness or whatever yourself, I mean, how are you going to notice all that stuff? So you might, it's like, say, listen, you have to be trained in some of these things too. Now, I don't think that you have to actually touch other people physically to bestow the initiations, touching the various parts where the light is to be visualized and all that. I mean, you don't even have to do that with the hands, but, that they are open to the process and, have faith in the possibilities and stuff like this. This is key, far more than any particular person or initiator. It's important that they themselves have the connection. And so, moving on, the male of the two main figures of this story thus far, I would think, him and her, they end up, having control over themselves. It's like, it's not time yet, despite our desires. It's not time. We need to put this in context, especially if in terms of her. And that's how a lot of guys end up settling down. You shouldn't expect it really, but it does happen that, you know, somebody makes the guy wait a couple months and he's like, okay, I'll marry her and I have to stay with her. And I should, regrets it in the first place that he went around with a bunch of women and all that before. So it's a common theme, and I have more or less witnessed it myself in people. So